Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're learning Daf Mem Beis of Masechta Shabbis. A quick overview before we begin. We will start out with a discussion of mixing hot water and cold water on Shabbos. Can you do that? And what are the rules pertaining to that? That's going to basically take us through the first Amud. After that, we're going to start talking a little bit about like kli rishon, kli sheini, right? Bishul, right? Does it work in a kli rishon versus a kli sheini? Different halachas of that. Can you add salt to a kli rishon? Okay, we're going to get into these things. Don't worry, relax. We'll get there. And finally, at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about Muktza. And we're going to talk a little bit about Muktza at the end. And yeah, that's going to be interesting as well. Let's get started. Okay, we're starting on Daf Mem Beis, Amud Aleph, about 8 or 10 lines into the Gemara by the two dots. Aval no sein chule, right? So we said in the Mishnah that it was kind of a Mishnah that required the Gemara to kind of explain it, but it said that you don't pour like water into, if you remove a urn from, or a kettle from a fire, so don't put in cold water so it'll get hot, but you could put it inside or in a cup in order so that it should be lukewarm. So we're continuing on that Mishnah. So let's see. So Tana Rabbanan, nosin adam chamen l'soch atzonen, v'lo atzonen l'soch chamen divrei Beis Shammai. Okay. So Beis Shammai says that if you have hot water in some kind of a kli, okay, you have hot water in a kli. So, well, actually let's do the opposite. If you have cold water in a kli, right? So you have some kind of a kli filled with cold water, and you now want to pour some hot water into the cold water. So that would be acceptable. And as Rashi points out, he says, because according to the Beis Shammai, who this is, says tata'a gavar, that whatever's on the bottom is stronger. And therefore, in this case, you have cold water that's in the kli already. So when you pour the hot water into the cold water, so the cold water is going to be stronger, and it's not, you don't have to worry about any cooking, like the hot water cooking the cold water. Don't worry about that. However, the reverse of that is that you may not pour cold water into a kli that is filled with, or that has hot water in it, because the hot water will be the stronger one, because it's on the bottom in this case, and it will, you have to be concerned that it's going to cook the cold water, or at least heat it up to a level that wouldn't be acceptable. Divrei Beis Shammai. That is Beis Shammai's opinion. Okay? So if it's cold water in the kli, you are allowed to pour hot water into it. If it's hot water in the kli, you may not pour cold water into it. Beis Hillel say, Bein chamen l'soch hatzonin, uvein tzonin l'soch hachamen mutter. Whereas Beis Hillel says either way is fine. You can pour cold water into a kli that has hot water in it, and you can pour hot water into a kli that has cold water in it. However, that is only if it's in your cup. So if you have a cup and the cup has some hot water in it, you can pour cold water into that cup, no problem. And of course also vice versa. And Rashi gives two reasons for that. One is because, when you're, when you are drinking something, you don't want it to be too hot, and therefore, you're gonna make sure, right? What does Rashi say? It says, because, says Rashi, that you want it to drink it, he's not going to be interested in it being too hot, right? Okay, and another reason, the kli sheini. Okay, and another reason, which I feel like this is probably the more important reason, which is that it's a kli sheini, right? Your cup is not the kli, is not the vessel that it actually was cooked in, right? You cooked it in some kind of kli, and then you poured it into your cup, so it's already a kli sheini, so it's not going to be mevashel. You don't have to worry about it cooking anything. Okay. Fine. Very good. So Beis Hillel says that, if it's in your cup, so you can mix the cold water and the hot water, it's no problem, even if the hot water was on the bottom. Okay? Aval, however, ba'ambati, in a bath, well, if it's in a bath, so then, chamen l'soch hatzonin v'lo tzonin l'soch hachamen. Well, if we're talking about a bath, well then, you would be able to pour hot water into cold water, but you would not be allowed to pour cold water into hot water in a bath. Okay, fine. probably because it's a lot bigger. So like if you have hot water there already, probably have to worry about the cold water, I guess, getting too hot when it hits the hot water, right? Also, maybe the ambati, the bath would be a kli rishon, in which case, the water would be able to cook in there. Okay, fine. Now, Reb Shimon ben Menasya oser. Reb Shimon ben Menasya says it's oser. Now, it's not clear what he means when it says that it's oser. The assumption for now is that it means that while Beis Hillel says that in a bath you would be able to pour hot water into cold water, Reb Shimon ben Menasya says no, you would not. That in a bath you would not be able to do anything. You would not be allowed to pour cold water into hot water or hot water into cold water. Rav Nachman halacha Reb Shimon ben Menasya, and Rav Nachman says that the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Menasya. Okay, well, we're going to have to understand Reb Shimon ben Menasya, and that's what we're going to do right now. Fine. Now, Savar Rav Yosef lemeimar. Now, Rav Yosef thought to say the following: Seifel areu kambati. So Rav Yosef thought to say the following, which is that if you have like a wash tub, right? So it's not a bath. It's also not a cup. It's like some kind of, a basin, some kind of tub that you can wash, I guess, your hands in, your face in, things like that. But it's not a bath. So that's this seifel. So Rav Yosef thought to say that a seifel should be treated just like a bath. Meaning that whereas Beis Hillel says that when it comes to a cup, there's no problems of mixing, right? You can pour cold water into hot water into cold water, no problem if it's in a cup. However, Beis Hillel says that if it's in a bath, you can only pour hot water into cold water. You wouldn't be able to do vice versa. You wouldn't be able to pour cold water into hot water. So now Rav Yosef says, what about this basin? What about this wash basin, which is bigger than, it's bigger than a cup, smaller than a bath? So Rav Yosef thought to say that it should be treated as a bath, meaning that you can only pour hot water into cold water. But Amar le Abaye, so Abaye asks two kashas on Rav Yosef. Number one, Tani Reb Chia, Seifel Eino Kambati. Number one is that Rabbi Chia, who's a Tana, says that a seifel, this basin, is not like a bath. So, Rav Yosef, why are you saying that it is like a bath? And question number two, Ulma disalik adaita meikara, the seifel areu kambati, that if, it's going to be true, right, that based on what had entered your mind to say that this wash basin is like a bath, well then I have a question, says Abaye. Remember that opinion of Reb Shimon ben Menasya where he kind of esoterically just says Aser? Well, V'amar Rav Nachman alavcha Reb Shimon ben Menasya. Well, Rav Nachman said that the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Menasya. And if we're assuming that Reb Shimon ben Menasya is going on the statement of Beis Hillel in the context of the bath, where Beis Hillel says that in a bath you would be allowed to pour hot water into cold water, and Reb Shimon ben Menasya says, no, you would not, which means that effectively in a bath, you wouldn't be able to do anything, right? You certainly wouldn't be able to pour cold water into hot water. And Reb Shimon ben Menasya is saying that you wouldn't even be allowed to pour hot water into cold water. And Rav Nachman saying that the halacha is like him. Well then, one second. And now if we're going to say that a seifel, that a wash bin, where you're just going to wash like your hands and face and stuff, is treated like a bath, well, Ela b'Shabbis rechitza b'chamin leka. Well, I don't know if I read that in the proper way, but Ela b'Shabbis rechitza b'chamin leka. But one second. We had said on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis, so I guess that was 3 days ago already, we had said that if you had heated up hot water before Shabbos, you would be allowed to wash your face, your hands, and your feet with that hot water. Now here's the thing. Nobody just takes boiling hot water and splashes it on their face, right? Meaning, when we say that you're allowed to wash your face, your hands and your feet with water that you heated up before Shabbos, you're going to have to cool them down somehow. And if you're going to tell me that Reb Shimon ben Menasya, if you're going to tell me that a wash basin is treated the same thing as a bath, and by a bath, Reb Shimon ben Menasya says that you would not be allowed to pour hot water into cold water, and we're saying that the same thing would therefore apply to a wash basin, which means that in a wash basin you would not be allowed to pour hot water into cold water. well then, effectively we're saying that you would not be able to wash your face on Shabbos with, right, your face, your hands and your feet on Shabbos with hot water that was prepared before Shabbos, because the only way you'd be able to effectively, actually use that hot water would be to somehow temper it by pouring it into cold water and then using it. But Rav Yosef, if you're saying that the wash basin is the same thing as the bath, and by a bath, Rav Shimon ben Menashe says that you're not allowed to pour hot water into cold water, and Rav Nachman says that the halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Menashe, then effectively we're saying that you're not actually, going to be able to wash your hands, your face, and your feet on Shabbos with water that was heated up before Shabbos, because you have no way to actually get them to a usable temperature. So the second question that Abaye asked, right, this thing that we just explained with Rav Shimon ben Menashe, Rav Yosef is able to, sort of defend himself, because it says, Misavat Rav Shimon ben Menashe aseifakai areishakai. 1 second. We've been assuming, this argument that we just expressed assumes that Rav Shimon ben Menashe is going on the seifa. That Rav Shimon ben Menashe is a continuation of Beis Hillel, that Beis Hillel says that when it comes to a bath, you would be allowed to pour hot water into cold water, to which Rav Shimon ben Menashe says, no, you would not. However, that's actually not the case. Rav Shimon ben Menashe is not going on Beis Hillel's opinion regarding a bath. Rav Shimon ben Menashe is going on the Reisha. What's the Reisha? Ubeis Hillel matirin bein chamen l'soch tzonen ubein tzonen l'soch chamen. That it said that Beis Hillel says in the Reisha that when it comes to a cup, you would be able to mix hot and cold water in either direction. You'd be able to pour hot water into cold water that was in a cup, and you'd be able to pour cold water into hot water that was in a cup. Now, it's on that Rav Shimon ben Menashe is saying, no, it's asur. What's asur? That you would not be allowed to pour cold water into hot water. That you would not be allowed to pour cold water into hot water, even in a cup. That is what Rav Shimon ben Menashe is coming to say. However, when it comes to the bath, Rav Shimon ben Menashe has no problem with Beis Hillel. And Beis Hillel says that you would be allowed to pour hot water into cold water. And Rav Yosef is saying, and therefore by saying that the wash basin is the same as the bath, you would still be able to pour hot water into cold water, and therefore you would still be able to wash your face, hands, and feet on Shabbos. Right? So it says, Rav Shimon ben Menashe oser tzonin l'soch chamen. The Rav Shimon ben Menashe says that no, when it comes to mixing hot and cold water in a cup, you would not be allowed to pour cold water into hot water. But then Rav Shimon ben Menashe is saying the same thing as Beis Shammai. Both Rav Shimon ben Menashe and Beis Shammai say that you would be allowed to mix hot water into cold water, but not allowed to mix cold water into hot water. And then Beis Hillel is saying that you can do either one. But Rav Shimon ben Menashe and Beis Shammai are saying the same exact thing. So Hachi Kamar, yeah, you're in fact right. This is what Rav Shimon ben Menashe is saying. Lo nechliku Beis Shammai v'Hillel b'davar zeh. What's happening is that Rav Shimon ben Menashe is actually coming to amend what Beis Hillel is saying, and saying that actually Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both agree that when it comes to a cup, you would be allowed to pour hot water into cold water, but not cold water into hot water, and they agree. Okay, that's what we want to argue. Okay, we want to argue that Rav Shimon ben Menashe is arguing on the Reisha, and basically throughout the Mishnah then, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would essentially say the same thing, right? That when it comes to a cup, according to Rav Shimon ben Menashe, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would say that you can pour hot water into cold water, but not cold water into hot water. When it comes to a bath, Beis Hillel would agree with Beis Shammai that also you'd be able to pour hot water into cold water, but not cold water into hot water. And Rav Yosef wants to say that the same thing would also apply to a wash basin. The only problem is that we have that brisa of Reb Chia, however, still, that says that you would be allowed to, that says that a wash basin is not like a bath. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't really matter if we say that Reb Shimon ben Menashe is going on the Reisha, because both a cup and a bath would be the same thing in that you would be allowed to pour hot water into cold water, but not cold water to hot water. So I guess it wouldn't really matter if we treat a wash basin like a cup or like a bath. But we're about to see that actually that wouldn't that this saying that Reb Shimon ben Manasseh is going on the Reisha, I don't think is actually really going to hold up, because now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua, says Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua, okay. Chazina le Rava, I saw Rava, delo kapet amana. So that Rava was not makbid when it came to like putting a vessel in water, meaning he had no problem taking a vessel that had cold water in it and putting it in a tub of hot water. He had no problem with taking a vessel that had hot water and putting it in a tub of cold water. He had no problem. How come? Miditani Reb Chia, from the fact that Reb Chia taught, no saying Adam kiton shamayim l'soch seifel shamayim. So Reb Chia says that you're allowed to put a pitcher of water into a wash basin full of water. Bein chamin l'soch tzonin, bein tzonin l'soch chamin, whether it was a bottle of hot water that you're submerging in cold water, or whether it's a bottle of cold water that you're submerging in hot water. And the Gemara wants to assume from here that therefore we see that, at least when it comes to a cup, let's say, or a seifel, when it comes to a seifel, actually you would be allowed to, pour both cold water into hot water and hot water into cold water. And it would also show that we treat a seifel like a cup, right? Because we say you can do cold into hot and hot into cold. But Amar le Rav Huna le Rav Ashi, Rav Huna said to Rav Ashi, Dilma sheini asem demifsek kli. But maybe that case of Reb Chia is different, because you're actually putting a kli into, you're not actually pouring hot water into cold water or cold water into hot water. You're putting a kli that has in it, cold water, you're putting that kli into hot water. A kli that has in it hot water, you're putting into cold water. But because it makes a hefsek, maybe that's why it's allowed, right? But it wouldn't necessarily teach us that you'd be able to actually mix hot and cold water in this seifel. So, Amarle, to which Rav Ashi said to Rav Huna, Me'are itmar. No, actually, the statement of Reb Chia, it doesn't say nosein, it says me'are. What does it say? Me'are adam kiton shamayim l'soch seifel shamayim bein chamin l'soch tzonin bein tzonin l'soch chamin. No, you can actually pour water into a wash basin of water, whether it's cold water into hot water or hot water into cold water. So we seem to be saying, I guess in order for that to make sense, you would have to say that Beis Hillel says that when it comes to a cup, you would be allowed to mix the hot and the cold water, whether it's cold into hot or hot into cold. And I guess we'd also have to say that a wash bin is like a cup, and that's why you can mix either way. And I think that would also imply that Reb Shimon ben Manasseh is arguing on Beis Hillel when it comes to a bath, to say that even hot water into cold water would not be allowed by a bath. And on that, Rav Nachman is passing like Rav Shimon ben Manasseh when it comes to a bath. However, when it comes to a cup, Beis Hillel would still say that you can mix the water either way, and that a wash basin is like a cup. All right, interesting stuff. All right, new Mishnah. Ha'ilpis ve'akedera she'aviron miusachin. So if you have some kind of a stew or some kind of a pot with food in it, that you took them, they were boiling hot, and you took them off on Erev Shabbos, right? Bein hashmashos, says Rashi, that you took them off the fire and they're boiling hot. Then lo yitein l'sochan tavlin. Well, then once it becomes Shabbos, do not, and it's still boiling hot, do not put spices into this kli. However, if you were to then dish out from this boiling hot kli into, a bowl or into some other bigger kind of serving piece, then you would be, essentially you put it into a kli sheini. At that point, you would be allowed to put in whatever spices you want, because you don't have to worry about cooking them in the kli sheini. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says a statement that's somewhat vague, and the Gemara is going to clarify it for us. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, l'chol hu nosein, chutz midavar sheish bo chometz v'tzir. You're allowed to put these spices into anything except if it has vinegar or some kind of a brine, and the Gemara is going to explain what that means. Okay. Here we go. The Gemara asks, right, so they ask a kasha. Rabbi Yehuda areisha kari l'kula or dilma seifa kari l'chumra. When Rabbi Yehuda says that you can put these spices into anything as long as there's no vinegar or brine in it, is that going on the reisha? What was the reisha? We said that when the kli rishon is boiling hot, you take it off the fire and it's boiling hot, you're not allowed to put spices in it because it's going to cook the spices. Are we saying that Rabbi Yehuda is actually then amending that to be makel and saying, no, of course you could put spices in. Put spices in whatever the heck you want. Kli rishon, boiling hot, put spices in. As long as there's no vinegar or brine in it, put spices in as much as you want. So there he's being makel, right? Meaning whereas the Tanna Kama is saying you can't put in spices if it's a kli rishon and it's boiling hot, Rabbi Yehuda says sure you can, as long as there's no vinegar or brine in there. But maybe he's going on the seifa, in which case he's actually being more machmir, more strict. Meaning, what's the seifa? It says, however, if you pour it out into a kli sheini, into a second kli, like a plate or some kind of serving piece, then you can put the spices in, no problem. No problem, no matter what. You can put the spices in, it's a kli sheini, it won't be mavashel, and you can put the spices in. And maybe there Rabbi Yehuda is saying, actually, not so fast. As long as there's no vinegar or brine in there, you could put spices in. But if there's vinegar or brine in that kli sheini, then you can't put in spices, in which case he's being more strict, whereas the Tanna Kama is saying, as long as it's a kli sheini, do whatever that you want. He's saying it depends. Even in a kli sheini, you'd have to make sure that there's no vinegar or brine. So that's our question. So Tashma Kamanir, the Tanya, we learn in a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, l'chol ilfasin hu nosein, l'chol akaderos roschos hu nosein. There you have it. We have a brisa in which Rabbi Yehuda says you could put whatever spices you want into whatever stew and whatever pot you want, however hot it is. Kli rishon doesn't matter. As long as there's no brine or vinegar in there. If there's brine and vinegar, that's when you have to worry about a kli rishon cooking it. As long as there's no brine or vinegar, you can put these spices into even a kli rishon and it won't cook it. That's fine. Okay, but the Tanna Kama says, it's a little bit more kind of black and white. It says, kli rishon cooks, don't do it. Kli sheini doesn't cook, you could put spices in. Now, Sover of Yosef the Meimar. Now, Rav Yosef thought to say, one second. What did we see? Oh, that's funny. Also, with the wash basin versus the bathtub was also like Sover of Yosef the Meimar. Rav Yosef kind of theorized to say. Okay, so here also, Sover of Yosef the Meimar. Rav Yosef kind of theorized to say, he thought to say, Melach hareu ketavlim. Okay? That he thought to say that we treat salt just like every other spice. That if it's in a kli rishon, it'll cook. And if it's in a kli sheini, it won't. So don't just take your soup off of the fire and it's still boiling hot and just put some extra salt in there. Don't do that because it'll cook the salt. Amalei Abaye. Abaye said to Rav Yosef, Tani Reb Chia, but Reb Chia taught. This is so funny. It's like the same structure as that thing on Amud Aleph with the wet wash basin and the bathtub, right? Right. Rav Yosef thought to say one thing. Abaye asked a question from the fact that we have a brisa of Reb Chia. Interesting. So anyway, so Amalei Abaye. So Abaye said to Rav Yosef, Tani Reb Chia taught melach eina ketavlin. Actually, salt is not like every other spice. The b'kli sheini nami b'shela. That not only does salt cook in a kli rishon, but even in a kli sheini, once you take that soup and put it in a bowl, you still wouldn't be able to put salt in it, because salt can cook even in a kli sheini. Ufliga de Rav Nachman, and that argues on Rav Nachman. Dam Rav Nachman tzricha milcha bishula kibisur de Torah. That Rav Nachman says that it takes the same amount of time to cook salt as it takes to cook a steak. Right? It takes a really long time. Whereas Rabbi Chia seems to be saying that no, it actually takes a really short time, and therefore you can't even put salt in a kli sheini because it's going to cook. Okay? Those who say, however, Sover of Yosef L'Meimar Melach Hareu Ketavlin B'Kli Rishon B'Shela B'Kli Sheini Lo B'Shela. However, there's another way to explain this dialogue, which is that Rav Yosef thought to say the same thing, which is that salt is like every other spice, and a kli rishon it cooks, and a kli sheini it doesn't. Amalei Abaye says to Rav Yosef, Tani Reb Chia, that Reb Chia taught, Melach eina ketavin de b'kli rishon nami lo b'shela. That Abaye actually said no, that Reb Chia says that salt is not like other spices, because salt, even in a kli rishon, does not cook. You can add salt directly to your boiling hot soup. V'hainu da'amar Rav Nachman, this is exactly what Rav Nachman said, tzricha milcha bishula kibisur de Torah, that in order to cook salt, you have to cook it like you would cook meat, right? And therefore, I guess once you take the pot off the heat and it's no longer on a heat source, so even though it's still boiling hot, you would still be allowed to put salt in there because it takes a long time to cook salt. And I guess by the time the salt would theoretically cook, it would already be, it wouldn't be boiling hot anymore. That's at least how I'm understanding. But the point is that, salt doesn't cook so easily. And therefore, even in a kli rishon that's boiling hot, you would be allowed to put in salt because it's not going to cook so quickly. Okay, very interesting. Okay, and another Mishnah talks a little bit about Muktza, which is kind of interesting. So, a noslin kli tachas haner lekabel es hashemen. Interesting. So, remember these candles that we've been talking about all the way, from basically like the past 20 daf already. These candles have been coming up, right? It's like those kind of earthenware things. I guess they're made out of earthenware or something, but like those sheini kind of lamps. And then you would fill it up with oil, and then you put like a wick at like this spout, and you would light the wick, and then the oil would be in like the main area, and then you'd have the wick going through the spout. So let's say this spout is dripping, and you don't want the spout to drip oil onto your table. So you want to take a little bowl and put it under the spout so that the drip won't go on your table, it'll go in the bowl. So a nosnin kli tachas haner lekabel es hashemen. So if it's on Shabbos and your candle is dripping, do not put a little bowl or receptacle under the spout to catch the dripping of the oil, because the oil is Muktza. You had no intention to use this oil on Shabbos. You had intention that this oil was going to be burning in your candle. All of a sudden this oil is, dripping out of the candle. This is oil that is Muktza. And therefore, you can't bring this little receptacle to put under the spout to catch the oil. And Rashi gives two potential reasons why that we're going to explore in the Gemara. One reason is what's called kli eno nital ela letzorech davar anital. Right, you can only take a kli for the purpose of the thing that you're taking it for. Meaning, in this case, why are you bringing this bowl? You're bringing this bowl to catch oil, but the oil is Muktza. So therefore you can't bring this bowl, because the whole point of bringing the bowl is only for the thing that you're bringing it for. The thing that you're bringing it for is Muktza, therefore you can't bring the bowl. The other way to understand it is that, sure, you could bring the bowl, but the problem is that once the oil drips in there, you can no longer use the bowl because it's full of Muktza stuff. And it's as if you basically took this bowl, cemented it into the table, at least for the duration of Shabbos, and it's almost like, building. It's almost like you're doing a malacha by cementing the bowl to the table, because now you can no longer touch it. Right? So it says, Mivatal kli me'echanu. Right? Basically you had this kli that you're able to use. You could have used it to put in soup, to put in whatever you want. You could have put in the bowl. But now you take the bowl, you put it under the candle, and now the oil drips in the candle. You have Muktza in the bowl. The oil drips into the bowl. You have Muktza in the bowl. You can no longer move it. You can no longer use it for your soup anymore. So because you're being mivatal kli me'echanu, you're nullifying this kli from what it was prepared to be able to do. You used to be able to put in soup in it. Now you can't use it for anything. So that's going to be the problem there. So anyways, the point being, you can't take a kli and put it under your dripping candle and fill it up with Muktza oil. Okay. However, if you anticipated that this was going to happen, maybe you know that this is a lamp, a candle that leaks. So before Shabbos, you took a kli and you put it under the spout of the candle, so that in the event that it drips, it'll drip into the bowl. Then that's fine. However, then you would not be able to get any benefit, I assume, from the bowl, or from the oil that's in the bowl, I guess, for that matter. But the way I'm understanding it, we'll have to see in the Gemara, but the way I'm understanding is once you've basically taken this receptacle before Shabbos and put it under the candle to receive the drippings of the oil, what would happen if the candle miraculously didn't drip into the bowl? And now you have a bowl, there's no oil in it. But I think the point is you wouldn't be allowed to now use this oil, this bowl to put soup in, or chalent, or whatever you want to put in there, because even though there's no Muktza oil in it, but you had, when Shabbos came in, you didn't have any intention of using it, since you figured it would be full of Muktza oil. So therefore, since you had no intention of using it, it's not minamuchan, it's not prepared, it's muktza, so you wouldn't be able to use it for soup or cholent or whatever you want. Interesting stuff. So Amar Rav Chisda, so says Rav Chisda, Avapisha Amru Einosnin Kli Tachas Tanegoles Lekabel Beit Sasa. So even though, okay, so according to Rav Chisda, we're talking about you have a chicken, and the chicken is going to lay an egg. Now this egg, once it's laid, as we've talked about, or at least alluded to, it would be nolad, right? It would be muktza. It would be something that didn't exist before Shabbos started. All of a sudden it came into being on Shabbos. So it's nolad, and it's muktza, and it's, and zeu. So Rav Chisda says that you would not be allowed, and let's say this chicken was laying an egg and it was on like a decline, a slant, where it was. And therefore he's concerned that when the chicken lays the egg is going to slide down this decline and break on something and crack on something. So he wants to bring some kind of receptacle to put it under the chicken somehow, so that the egg will end up in this kli. And he wants to do this on Shabbos. So Rav Chisda Avapisha Amru Ein Nosnin Kli Tachas Tanegoles Lekabel Beit Sasa. So Rav Chisda said, even though we said that you don't put a receptacle under the chicken to receive the egg, Aval Kofe Alea Kli Shelo Tishaber. However, once the egg has already been laid, you would be allowed to take a kli and, cover the egg so that nobody should step on it or anything like that. Okay, fine. Omar Rabba. So now Rabba explains, my time with Rav Chisda. What's pshat with Rav Chisda? How come I can't take along the kli in order to put, for the egg to be laid inside of it, but I can take the kli in order to cover the egg once it's been laid? So kasaver tanagolas asui lahato beitzasa ba'ashba ve'en asui lahato beitzasa b'makom midron. Because a chicken generally lays its eggs in like a garbagey kind of area. Ve'en asui lahato beitzasa b'makom madron. And it doesn't usually lay its eggs on like some kind of, tilted surface that it's going to break. And therefore, v'atzala mitzuya itiru, v'atzala she'ena mitzuya lo hitiru. Oh. So according to Rabbah, the whole problem that we're dealing with over here of bringing a kli for this egg is that the egg is muktza. And according to Rabbah, the problem is kli eino nital ela l'tzorach davar nital. You can only bring a kli, right, or a kli is only brought or moved for the need of that which is being brought for. In this case, it's the egg. The egg is muktza, therefore you can't bring the kli for the egg. However, in a place where it's common, then it would be okay. And therefore, if the chicken is laying an egg in like a place where it normally lays eggs, such as in like a garbage area, so you'd be able to, bring the kli and, cover up the egg after it's been laid so that nobody steps on it, right? However, to bring that kli, in order to catch the egg, because it's on a slant, which is not something that's regular, you wouldn't be able to bring a kli for the need of this muktza egg on Shabbos. But if it's in a place where it's common, such as in a garbage dump, where I guess the chickens lay eggs and you don't want somebody to step on it, so you could bring a kli to cover it up for that. Okay, fine. But Abaye asked the kasha. But one second, even a situation where you're saving something that is uncommon, they wouldn't allow you to bring a kli for that? We have a Mishnah that says that if you have a barrel that's full of tevel, I guess maybe like wine, let's say you have wine, it's untied, so you can't drink it right now. You would have to, take tithes from it, and we know that we don't take tithes on Shabbos, so it's basically muktzah because you can't drink it. And what happens if it gets a hole in it, if it breaks, and it's on your roof? So it says, Mevi kli maniach tachtea. You can bring a kli and put it under it, so, to try to salvage the wine. So here, we're basically bringing a kli for the use of something muktza, and it's not common that the barrel will break. So Rabbi answers, Begolfi chadate, the shriche de pakoi. No, actually it's talking about these new barrels that since they're new, it actually is more common for them to break, and that's why it is considered something common. That's why you could bring the kli to save the wine. Another kasha. That you're allowed to, on Shabbos, bring over a kli and put it under a candle so that, if there are sparks that kind of come out from the candle, that it shouldn't land, or maybe if some of the wick falls on the table, that it shouldn't land on the table and burn anything. So that's not common. So nitzotzos not mishchiche. No, nitzotzos, these are also common enough, and that's why you're allowed to bring a kli and put it to catch the nitzotzos. Okay, Eisvei, Abaye asked the kasha and Rabba, Kofin kaira ala ner shlo ye'echaz bikora. Okay, but what about the Mishnah that says that you're allowed to take a like bowl and put it on, over the candle so that the flame from the candle doesn't catch to the beam of the roof that is above it. That's also not common, and yet you're allowed to bring the bowl for that. So no, that's talking about these short houses where fires are more common. Therefore, it would be considered common. Okay, but what about the fact that we say that if, a beam of the roof breaks, you're allowed to take a bench or these poles from the bed and support the beam. And it's not common for a beam to break. And we see that you're allowed to bring a kli, to support the beam. So, no, it's talking about new beams, that it actually is more common for new beams to break. No, it's in kli tachas adelef b'Shabbos. Okay, what about the fact that we say that you can take a kli and you can put it under a drip in the roof on Shabbos? Okay, no, that's also talking about new houses where I guess the roof is still, we're testing it out, and therefore there's more of a chance that it's going to leak and drip, and that's why you're allowed to bring the kli over there. Okay, so Rabbi basically maintains his opinion that, you're not allowed to bring a kli for something Muktza on Shabbos. However, if it's something common, then you would. And that is why you wouldn't be allowed to bring this kli when this chicken lays an egg when on a slant, because that's not so common. However, if it's like in a garbage dump or something, then you would be allowed to take a kli and cover up the egg so that it doesn't break. Okay. Very, very cool. Okay, so let's do a recap of what we learned today. So we started off today talking about, can you mix hot and cold waters? Beis Shammai said that you're allowed to pour hot water into cold water, but not cold water into hot water. Beis Hillel kind of made a differentiation. He says, well, if it's in a cup, so then you could do whatever you want. Mix hot water into cold water into hot water, no problem. If it's in a bath, however, then you can pour hot water into cold water, but not cold water into hot water. Then Reb Shimon ben Manasseh has this somewhat cryptic statement where he just says it's asur, and Rav Nachman says that the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Manasseh. Ultimately, I think we assume that Reb Shimon ben Manasseh is going on the statement of Beis Hillel regarding the bath, that you would not be allowed to even pour hot water into cold water in the bath. Okay, then we started, Rav Yosef, started talking about a wash basin, right, that you use to wash your hands, your feet, and your face. Rav Yosef wanted to say that it was like a bathtub. However, Abaye asked two kashas on Rav Yosef. He said, first of all, we have a brisa of Rabbi Chia that says that a wash basin is not like a bathtub. And number two, if a wash basin is in fact like a bathtub, well then we have problems, because Rav Shimon ben Manasseh says that actually you're not allowed to mix water at all in a bathtub. And if a basin is like, a wash basin is like a bathtub, well then you wouldn't be able to mix water at all in a wash basin. Then how would you be allowed to wash your hands, feet, and face with water that you heated up before Shabbos? Because you know that that's allowed, and obviously you're not going to pour scalding hot water on your face. And we ended up ultimately proving that, or bringing a brisa from Rabbi Chia that says actually, when it comes to a wash basin, you're allowed to pour both cold water and hot water, cold water into hot water into cold water. So we see both that the wash basin would be considered like a cup, and that by a cup, Beis Hillel would say you can mix things however the way you want, hot into cold, cold into hot. Next, we talked about kli rishon and kli sheini in a new Mishnah, and basically what we got out of there is that in a kli rishon, things do cook. In a kli sheini, things do not cook. Okay. Then we talked about putting salt into a kli rishon. We seem to say ultimately that you would be allowed to put salt even into a kli rishon because it takes a very long time for salt to cook. And then we talked at the end about if you can bring a kli for the need of something that's muktza. So the Mishnah talked about if you have a candle that is dripping, can you bring over some kind of receptacle to catch the drops? And the Mishnah says that you would not because those drops are muktza. And then we talked about Rabba's opinion, which was that you can't bring a kli for the need of something that's muktza on Shabbos. That's why you wouldn't be allowed to bring this kli and put it under the candle because the oil is muktza. And also we then talked about Rav Chisda's statement, which is that you wouldn't be able to take a kli and put it under a chicken to catch the egg because when it's on a slant, because it being on a slant is not common, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to bring over this kli for the need of this muktza thing. However, if it was a common situation, like a chicken laying an egg in a garbage dump, so then you would be allowed to take a kli and cover the egg so that nobody steps on it or anything like that. Alright, well, that was Daf Mem Beis. Hope everybody enjoyed. Cheers.